Hi everyone, hope you're safe and well, and welcome back to our third session of our Dance Primary Twilights. So I want us to start by reviewing our curriculum overviews and schemes of work. At the end of our last session, I set you the task to start to design your own curriculum overviews for primary dance. So I want us to follow the SWOT model, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if you would like to send me the overviews that you have compiled so far, that is absolutely fine. I'm more than happy to give some feedback and some strategies to help to improve those. So you might want to start by just pausing the video, having a look over your notes from our previous session, and just really starting to unpick the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of those overviews and schemes of work. That's going to really nicely feed into today, which is going to break that down even further into lesson planning. Okay, so we're going to start off with Ofsted. So we know that we now have deep dives for teaching and learning within different subjects. So within primary, it will be a deep dive into the PE curriculum. However, we know that dance is a strand within that. So we need to really make sure that we are prepared so that when these deep dives happen, we are able to execute them confidently. So I want you to just take a minute to pause the video and just look through some of these key items that are going to make up the deep dives. So obviously, firstly, we've got observing, learning, and talking to teachers. So just take a couple of minutes, have a read through, and try and really get to grips with what they're looking for. Great. So next we have our final strands, which are work scrutinies and talking to children. So again, I'm just going to encourage you to take a minute to have a read through of what they're looking for. Okay, so here are some questions then to consider when we are planning. So questions to think about within dance. How have you designed your curriculum? So that lends itself to the work we did in session 2. What are you trying to achieve in your curriculum? What are your aims for this subject within the school? What schemes do you follow? Why is this subject taught in this way? How do children progress in this subject over their time at the school? How do you ensure the subject knowledge is retained? How do you ensure that pupils with SEND benefit from the curriculum in this subject? Are expectations high enough? What do curriculum leaders expect that inspectors will see when they visit lessons and speak to pupils? How are misconceptions addressed in this subject? How does this subject link to other curriculum areas? How do you support staff? How do you avoid unnecessary workload? And finally, what subject resources do you offer children and how are they matched to the curriculum? So what I'm really hoping is out of today, I'm going to give you some resources that are going to help you to fulfill some of those questions. And also with our previous sessions, we know that we've already started to touch upon how we can have cross-curricular links between dance and other areas of the curriculum, and also really looking at the overview, so the 3 I's, so the implementation, the intent, and the impact. So we've been looking at those already. So I'm going to start off with Rosenshine's principles. We know that this is really popular at the moment with teaching and learning. So originally they were 17 instructional procedures, and they followed daily review, new materials in small steps, ask questions, provide models, guide student practice, check student understanding, obtain high success rate, scaffolds for difficult tasks, independent practice, weekly 7 monthly review. So what happened was Thomas Sheraton, he simplified these into 4 models, which are reviewing material, questioning, sequencing concepts, and modelling, and stages of practice. I would really highly recommend that you either buy this book or try to have a look on the internet at some of the literature from there. It's really simple and it's really effective with embedding Rosenshine's principles into our teaching and learning. So another thing that I have utilised to start to build a really good lesson structure is the accelerated learning cycles. This was developed by Alistair Smith, and it believes the following, that learning should be connected, evolved, beneficial, negotiated, realizable, sensory, constructed, reflective, complex, active, and rehearsed. So if you want to just take 30 seconds to have a look at all of those 11 stages and beliefs within the accelerated learning cycle, that would be great. So this is what the cycle looks like. You have 4 stages. You have your connect, activate, and then you have your demonstrate and your consolidate. So what I have done within my particular context is I have then developed that structure, including challenge and facilitate in there as well, just so that it has, so that every lesson meets all of the needs of all of our students, really. So utilising Rosenshine's principles of instruction and the ALC, here is a successful lesson structure that has improved the quality of teaching and student outcomes within my own practice. So here you can see the connect phase. So you are really looking at retrieval and reviewing previous content, engaging them. So it's like your starter activity. Your activate is where you're teaching new material in small steps. You're using questioning and checking for understanding. You're posing problems and you're using a multisensory approach so that students are really engaged and buying into your lesson. You've then got facilitate, so the opportunity to model and scaffold tasks and then student guided practice. You've got demonstrate, so this is where the independent learning and collaborative tasks take place within the lesson. Again, this relates back to student guided practice, and it offers ways of demonstrating understanding independently and the opportunity for you to check that students have understood the content that you have taught. Challenge. So again, this relates back to independent learning and student guided practice to obtain a higher success rate. And I just want us to really think about, it's not about only challenging our more able learners, how are we even challenging our SEND learners? And we know that SEND is a really high priority within the Ofsted framework. So we really need to make sure that they feel challenged as well as our higher achievers. And then finally, consolidate. So checking the understanding, weekly and monthly reviews, and really just reflecting on what's happened within the lesson and making sure that learning was relevant and successful. So this is something that we've developed at Barking Abbey, and that's now called the BA Way. So I am going to send this presentation to you so that you can digest it a bit more. But as you can see here, we colour code each of the lesson phases, and I've also been modelling it in this presentation today, so you can start to see how I have used them within my CPD sessions as well. And it just gives you some tips or some strategies as to how you can embed these different phases within your lesson. What I would say is it's not essential that you hit every single phase within the lesson. It's just about having opportunities over a scheme of work for all of this type of learning to take place. I'm very aware that some of us have very short lessons and we have 55 minutes. So within the lesson, are we able to always consistently hit all of these stages? Probably not. And that's fine, but it's just being mindful about ensuring all of this access to learning is facilitated. So this is an example of a typical connect phase that I would do within dance. And I'm really happy for you to just lift this and take some of these ideas for your own lesson planning. So I use a lot of peer talk so that all students are engaged and we know that everyone's on task within these starter activities. And again, I'm going to give you some links to the clips that you might want to use as well. So I've given a link to a clip here, and it's asking the students to identify the style of dance within the clip, identify any dynamics you see within the clip, and then for both partners to discuss what makes this style of dance different to other dance styles and what strand of the dance education model would you identify this task as. That's something that I want you to think about. Okay, so for both of the partners, they would be thinking, okay, why? So this is a street dance clip that I've given, a hip hop clip. Why is that different to ballet or tap or jazz? How do we know that this type of dance is different to things that we've seen before? Okay, and then we know, just as from a practitioner perspective, this is really developing their appreciation strand of the dance education model. Okay, so here are the Rosenshine principles that are addressed, and that is provide models and asking questions. So then an idea for the activate phase, so the next phase where you get them up and moving, I would do a really energetic warm up, which I would be doing with you guys if we weren't in lockdown. You've missed out there. And I would start to unpick the stylistic features of hip hop as a style. So a stylistic feature are the characteristics that distinguish a dance style from other dance styles. So here are some really simple features that I identify with my students. So it's low to the ground movements, bouncing grooves, fast and sharp dynamics, high energy, the movement matches the music, attitude, and over the top facial expressions. And then the Rose and Shine principles that this addresses within them accessing this new knowledge is present new material using small steps. So they've just watched the video, they can see it from themselves, they've had a little discussion to try and discover what hip hop is within their partners. And now you are actually giving them the stylistic features of that style. So then this is facilitate. So what I would always do is have a motif, so a short sequence of movement that I teach the students so they are able to then embody and learn that dance style. So I'm sending this to you so you can have a look at this. There's a clip here of all of these simple hip hop grooves. So you can copy them and start to make your own motif from that. I would really, really suggest that you do that, create a real short motif. And if you want to email me, I'm more than happy to film myself doing one that you can copy. So just let me know if you'd like me to do that. So we've got the WAP, the Steve Martin, the Rambo, the Cabbage Patch, the Reebok, the Smurf, the Prep, and the Bart Simpson. Okay, so what you can do when you watch this clip is you can start to learn them and you can start to put them in a sequence that you will then be able to teach your own students. So the Rose and Shine principles that are addressed through this are presenting new material using small steps, providing models because you might want to show them clips of the clips for themselves of these grooves, and also you will be modeling the motif that you teach them, asking questions and checking for understanding, which you'll do naturally when you start to teach them the movement. So then now we're looking at the differentiation and scaffolding. So as I said before, the focus on SEND makes differentiation and scaffolding a real top priority. Our goal is to ensure we have high expectations for all students and always try to teach the top. We must then provide appropriate scaffolding for all of our students in order for them to attain the best outcomes possible. And this means appropriate scaffolding for high, middle and low attainers that also provide sufficient challenge. So just going back to the impact of what this type of lesson structure has on scaffolding, it really allows all students from all abilities to really be challenged and pushed to meet their full potential. So here's some highlights from Rose and Shine's principles on scaffolding. I've just unpicked them from the research. New materials in small steps, limit the amount of material at once, clear, detailed instructions. So that might be verbally, using the visualizer, using that video that I've just given you so they can visually learn that for themselves as well. Think aloud models, time for explanation, provide examples and reteach when necessary. So scaffolding is a temporary measure. It is given and removed at key times. It is really vital in independent practice. You can have writing frames, and it's really important that we start to wean our students off the scaffolds. And then providing examplers is going to be key in this provision, and challenging misconceptions and common errors. So I think it's really important to understand that this is not something that is there forever. It's something that it starts off quite detailed, the scaffold that we give them, and then over time as they become more confident and their knowledge and skills are acquired over time, we start to really reduce the scaffold that we give them, especially in a creative subject. We want them to be really free and innovative. So just from some research, here are some examples of modelling. So we've got the I, we and you modelling. So the step one is very teacher-led. It's showing a worked example, and it's explicitly being taught by the teacher. So for example, from what I just showed you, it would be the professional example of a video clip of a dance company performing a hip hop piece. It would then be us as the teachers teaching the stylistic features within a short motif. Step 2 is again teacher guided, and that's a completion example. So the teacher and student write, which allows practice of specific steps with teacher support. So in our context, that would be where students are actually choreographing. So they're not writing, they are choreographing their own work within this style. So using the stylistic features and the bank of movement that you have taught them, they are then able to create for themselves in that style. And then again, independent examples, you might want them to do that in smaller groups. You might want them to do it as a solo and really test their understanding of the style that you've been teaching them. I'm not going to go through this with you, but again, this will be in the PowerPoint that is shared to you. And it's just a really clear example of how we can break down the I, we and you modelling for SEN, middle ability and more able learners. So I really urge you to have a look at that if you have some time. So this is how I would urge us to start to embed differentiation within creative tasks. So I use this within Key Stage 3. And it's really useful for all students to be able to access the creative tasks. I am going to send you blank copies of what we can see here below, so that you can adapt them for all of your dance schemes of work across all of your primary key stages. And again, if you do need any examples, then please do let me know. And I have done some examples for you that you can just lift and use for yourself as well. So what I want you to do between now and our next session is have a go at creating some of your own task cards. So use the task card that you have been given to rehearse and or create your own motif in groups. So this is what I would do. I would give out the task cards, and here you can see I've got red, orange and green. So my red are my easier task cards, my amber or orange are my middle ability, and then my green are my higher ability. So once we've learned the motif that we've just taught from those hip hop grooves, I then give out the task cards, and then they then have these tasks that they need to complete within their group. So the groups that I set are usually based on ability. Sometimes I do mix it up, but this is just a really effective way of using the cards. So once you have done that, I want you to really think about looking at the task that I've set, how the challenges are embedded for all of the students, regardless of their ability. And then I want you to start to try and write those for your own. So thinking about the projects that we were looking at in a session, an earlier session of ours, when I asked you to think about a project, a theme or an idea for a scheme of work, starting to write your task cards that relate to that scheme of work you're working on. So this relates to student guided practice, providing scaffolds for difficult tasks, independent practice and checking for student understanding. And quite often students love creative tasks because it gives them the freedom to work with their peers, but also just come up with their new ideas. So they're really eager to work together and share with you their ideas, particularly at primary level, because they've not got that inhibitions or lack of self-confidence. They're usually very willing to give things a try. Okay, so again, please, if you have any questions about these task cards, just drop me an email. I'm more than happy to help you to create a bank of cards relating to the topic you're teaching. And again, this is another strategy that I use to really challenge our students, but also really include all of our students within the lesson. And these are called habits of mind. So I really like the idea of these because it encourages our students to become experts within our subject area. So what I want you to do is think about dance and look at how I've broken this down. So you've got the performer, and I've given some of the key language from the criteria from the PE curriculum, so you can start to utilize that within your language during your lesson. So the performer, obviously, that is the person who is learning the material from the teacher or from their peers, and then they are performing. You've got the choreographer, so you might want to give one student in each group the ownership of creating the choreography, and the other students are the performers. Therefore, the choreographer is obviously being stretched and challenged to take on a leadership role. You've got the director or the leader. So the director, they might be overseeing the whole class. They might be overseeing a larger group of students. They might be overseeing the choreographer and the performers and giving a more of a artistic vision of the whole piece. You've got the critic. So we're encouraging all of our students to be critics when we're asking them to give peer feedback, reflect on peer and professional work, and also when we're asking them to reflect on their own strengths and weaknesses. And then finally, being the audience. So just teaching them audience etiquette. So you have to sit quietly. You shouldn't be talking through performances. You should applaud all of the performances that you see. Okay, so really getting them to develop those habits throughout the lesson. So you can give these roles to students during your lessons so that they really feel valued and they feel that they are being challenged to exceed their potential. So I've already touched upon this, and what I've done, so when you do go back through this PowerPoint, you can see the suggestions that I have in terms of ability for each of the roles to stretch and challenge all students. So now this is looking at performance and feedback. Okay, so what I have done for you guys is I've tried to simplify the Key Stage 3 version that I use with my students, and you might need to simplify it a bit more depending on if you're a Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2 subject lead. So this is really encouraging oracy and literacy within dance lessons. So it's encouraging students to be able to articulate what they see confidently within dance. So this might be at the end of lessons when they're giving peer feedback. It might be if they're talking about their own work. And again, I have scaffolded it so that students of all abilities can talk about dance and they can appreciate dance and they can be audience members and have their opinions heard. So again, I will send you an actual copy of this in a Word document that you can amend and print off and utilise within your lessons. I personally laminate them and print them off back to back, so it's one document that they can turn over and they can use. And again, I've got banks of dance terminology, I've got adjectives, sentence openings, connectives, so they can really start to think about how they're speaking and create and constructing full sentences within their answers. Okay, so this is something that this is an example of what I would have done with you guys if we were actually together in person, and this would be a consolidate. So this is just an idea of what you can do within your lessons to consolidate the learning that's taken place. So it might be an idea of peer talk again. So partner 1, you might want to ask them what were the basic hip hop dance grooves that they've learned during the lesson. Partner 2, what were the stylistic features of hip hop dance that they'd learned? And then both partners, this is what I would have given you, is to create a lesson with differentiated task cards based on a scheme of work you intend to deliver. So I already set that a couple of slides ago, but this is just an example of how you could consolidate the lesson with your students in a really quick fire, speedy way. And this addresses Rose and Shine's principles through daily review, asking questions, obtaining a high success rate, independent practice, check for student understanding, and again, that can feed into your weekly and monthly review. So here are some additional reading suggestions. I have broken some of the reading down for you, picked out some of the highlights, and there's some really good websites and principles that you can look at. So I will get all of those resources that I've mentioned sent to you as soon as possible. And again, if you do have any questions or want any advice, then please do drop me an email, jonesg@barkinabbeyschool.co.uk, and I will get back to you. So I hope you all continue to stay safe and well, and I very much look forward to speaking with you virtually on our next session. Take care. Bye.